Well, welcome to 20 Minutes with Mike. I'm so excited to have you here today. I have a great show. I'm going to be talking today about the five fundamentals for peak performance. And I think no matter what it is that you do, whether you're an attorney or you do anything else, understanding the five foundations for peak performance is so critical. All right, we only got 20 minutes, so let's get started. All right, so peak performance, what am I talking about specifically? Well, I'm talking about what we commonly know as flow. You know, those times where you're just totally in the groove, everything is just working. You know, you're in that mental state, you're in that space, in that place where everything that you want to be going on is just happening. Everything is happening easily, and you're making tremendous strides. That's what peak performance is. Now, flow is not something that you can be in 24/7, but being in a position to get into flow or to perform at your very, very best. I mean, let's take the word flow out of it, because a lot of people think, you know, flow is about athletics, and it is. You know, a lot of the time that I find myself in flow is when I'm riding my bike, or I'm working out, or I'm skiing, or I'm doing something more athletic. But there's other times when I'm in flow as well. Like when I'm giving a closing argument, I am totally in flow. When I'm doing a good cross-examination, I am in flow. Everything is just happening. So let's talk about what are the five foundations that one needs to get into that state. Because if you are not set up properly, you are not going to get into peak performance. It doesn't mean that you can't get things done. It's just you're not going to be at your very, very best. And I'm talking about being tip-top at your very best. All right. So the five foundations, what are they? Number one, getting enough sleep consistently. The single thing that you can do to improve your performance is sleep. There's nothing else that I am aware of that you can do to improve your performance better than getting enough sleep. Now, in my book, Legalese, the Ultimate Guide on How to Survive a Law Practice, I talk about sleep a lot in that book. I have actually 3 different places where I talk about sleep. And I say that if you only get one thing out of that book, the understanding of the importance of sleep, the investment that you made to buy and read that book was well worth it. Sleep is such a critical component to performance. And I'm not talking about, you know, every once in a while, you know, you don't get enough sleep and you're a little draggy perhaps, but I'm talking about consistently, you know, 95% of the time getting good night's sleep. Now, I am very fortunate as I sleep well. I know that that's not true for everybody. If you are a person who struggles with sleep, you need to make this a priority to figure it out and figure out a way to improve your sleep. And there are a lot of ways to do that. Reducing your screen time immediately before bed, and you know, a variety of other things. But sleep is such a critical component. And you know, I am very familiar with sleep deprivation. And I'll tell you just a quick story. I used to be in a mastermind group with a guy, and he would routinely, once a month at least, do an all-nighter. For some reason, he thought that his practice required that. And when we would have these phone calls on Friday afternoon, when we got on the call, I knew just by looking at him whether or not he had done an all-nighter. You could tell just the way he was lagging. Sleep is such a critical component. All right, what's number 2? Number 2 is regular exercise. Now, you know, some of you might say, well, Mike, that's easy for you to say. You've been an athlete your whole life. You always, you know, love going out and you know, exercising. And that's absolutely true. But that doesn't change the fact that regular exercise is a critical component to taking care of yourself. And, when we're talking about peak performance, it's not just mental, it's physical as well. If you are not in at least in decent shape, things are going to be more difficult. When I'm in trial, it is physically exhausting, even though I'm sitting there. The brain uses a lot of energy. Consistent exercise, and let's be clear, going for a walk is exercise. If all you did was just walk, that would make a big difference, as opposed to sitting on the couch and binge watching through Netflix or whatever. Getting regular exercise. That doesn't mean every single day. It really is going to depend on you and what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but getting good exercise. And guess what? Regular exercise will improve your sleep. So, those are a great way of getting two things done. The other thing about regular exercise and getting out into nature is it's just good for you. And it gives you an opportunity to think about things and to use the default mode network to let your brain just kind of percolate problems and questions and issues that you've been having. It's a great meditative experience. A lot of the meditation that I do regular meditation where I sit on a cushion and such, but also when I'm out on a bike ride in particular, it's very meditative. All right, number 3 foundation for peak performance. Determine when you are the most alert and then work in that space. All right, so what am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is, when are you at the top of your game? Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? Most of us, if you took 5 seconds to think about it, you would go, yeah, I'm better in the morning, or, I really get my second wind and I'm better in the afternoon. The first thing is you got to identify it. The second thing that I would say is that it could change over time. I used to be a night owl. I used to consider myself, more productive in the evening. But I have found over the years that the morning is the critical time for me. And just as a quick anecdote, over the last several years, I've been a big Tim Ferriss fan. Tim Ferriss wrote 2 books that I thought were really critical for this idea. Tools for Titans and A Tribe of Mentors. And in both of those books, he interviews incredibly successful people from every walk of life, from Shaun White to angel investors, endurance athletes to, movie moguls. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It crosses the entire gamut. And the thing that I picked up off of that, the thing that really made the biggest impression with me, was that the vast majority of them, probably 90% or more, had a very maintained morning ritual. They had a morning ritual that they followed on a regular basis. And what most of them talked about is that the morning was the time that they were the most productive. So, if they were writers, they would write in the morning. If they were, inventors or, doing investing, and they were doing the studying and studying all the stock charts and, all the P's and L's of the businesses and trying to make decisions on that, the morning was the critical component. The morning was the time that they were the most successful with it. Now, it's not all that important when you decide. If you're an afternoon person, you're a morning person, it doesn't matter. The key component here is identifying when you are at the top of your game, and then work in that space. Set up your calendar so that you are doing the most critical and difficult things at the time that you are the most alert. And I'm not talking about, 3 Red Bulls into the afternoon. I'm talking about, when is your body the most alert? So if you're getting consistent exercise and you are getting enough sleep, it would seem to follow that the morning will be the critical time for you. And that may mean getting up earlier. I know for me, getting up earlier before the press of day is when I am the most productive. And there are a number of things that I have on my regular schedule that I do and get them done in the morning, because that's when I'm the most productive, and I really want to get these things done for myself. And then, working on those projects that are really challenging, and the most difficult, and sometimes the ones that you don't want to do, right? Eat the frog, man, just get it done. Get it done, and have the rest of your day to take off, or at least enjoy, and then do the things that are of lower priority. So determine when you're the most alert, and then do your best to work in that space. Number 4, foundational. Learn to chase the flow. All right, what does that mean? So to me, it means 2 different things. One, generally, it's about giving yourself the space to work when you are the most productive. So let's say you've identified the morning. Let's say you've identified, from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock is when you are going to, get the most productive things. And as an anecdote, most of us cannot be at peak performance for more than a few hours a day. So, think, oh, I'm going to be peak performance 8 hours a day. That's probably not the case. But if you can get a solid hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours of really just, head down, grinding it out, that would be great. That would be actually fantastic. And then there's other things that you can do that, won't require the peak performance. So how do you chase the flow? So the first thing is you got to turn off all the distractions. That's one of the great things about the morning is the phone's not ringing, and there's nothing that actually needs to be done, especially if you're taking time like 7 to 9 before the regular workday. Nobody expects you to respond to an email before 9 o'clock. Nobody is going to be calling you before 9 o'clock. So the number one thing, and this is true across the board, turn off all the damn distractions. Turn off your Facebook, turn off your notifications, turn off all the bells and the dingers and all that crap that goes on, that distraction. Because if you're in flow and you're working on a project and then you get distracted, the studies show that it could take up to 15 minutes, sometimes even more, to get back into the flow if you are ever able to do it. Distractions are a huge problem, and you need to limit those. So, when we're talking about chasing the flow, give yourself the opportunity to do it by turning off all the things that are going to distract you. Close your office door. Let everybody know, hey, do not call me between 7 and 9. Let your family know, look, this is the time that, unless, as my friend Richard James used to say, unless the building's on fire and I'm the only person with a bucket of water, man, leave me alone. Let me get my things done. I will make myself available to you at a later time. But right now, during this, chunk of time, you've got to give me the space. All right. So that's number 1. And then the second component of that, learning to chase the flow, is give yourself the flexibility to continue to work when you're in the groove. Let's say you scheduled 7 to 9, but, things happen. You didn't get started, and you got started at 8. And you're, rocking and rolling, you're in the groove or whatever, and 9 o'clock hits. Well, have you given yourself, do you have the autonomy, the ability to go, I'm going to just keep pushing forward. I'm going to just keep working on this thing for another hour or 45 minutes or whatever, giving yourself the ability to do that. Even as a morning person, even as a person who really recognizes that the morning is my most productive time, a lot of times right after exercising. So like I try to get my difficult things done in the morning and then try to go exercise more in the afternoon. And a lot of times I come back from the exercise and I have some great ideas and I'm full of energy because I've got all these endorphins and serotonin and all this stuff that's flowing through my body, and I can get right back into the groove. Give yourself the flexibility to take advantage of those times when things are really rocking and rolling. And number 5, and this is, I think, so critical, and it feeds into everything else that we've just talked about. Learn the art of saying no. in my book, Legalese, the Ultimate Guide on How to Survive a Law Practice, I have a whole chapter on saying no. Learn to say no to the clients that you don't want. Learn to say no to the practice areas that you don't want to be involved in. Learn to say no to the commitments that you don't want to do. How many times have you said yes to something and you're like, oh, man, I don't really want to do it, or I don't have time to do it, or it just doesn't interest me, but I know, somebody else wanted me to do it. In my book, I talk about on the fact that I used to have this kind of belief that, if somebody asked me to do something, I needed to say yes. There was some sort of karmic, if I did something for them, that they would, owe me a favor and somehow it would pay off. And there's a little bit of truth to that. But what I really found is that when people ask you to do something and you say yes, that just leads to them asking you to do more and more things. And pretty soon you're overwhelmed and you've got too much on your plate. If you don't want to do something, you need to learn to say no. And again, in Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors, one of the questions that Tim Ferriss asks is, what was one of the things that was a real changing point in your life, the ability to become more productive and more efficient and effective? And many of the people said the ability and the willingness to say no. If you're willing to say no, so here's the thing. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. There's only a finite amount of time and energy, right? So if you say, yes, I'm going to go to this event, then you're saying no to doing something else, right? That you could be doing with that time. If you take a client, you have just committed a bunch of time to something. And if you don't want to do that, then ultimately you're going to be giving up something, right? So every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. Just keep that in mind. Learn the art of saying no. Say no to the things that you don't want to do so that you have the time to say yes for the things that you want. One of the things that it took me a long time to learn this, but and actually intellectually I knew it for a long time, but then to actually incorporate it is a whole nother story, is to say no to clients. Somebody comes in and they got a big check and they're willing to hand it to you and they say they want to hire you, but I know that this is not a case that I should be doing, or a case that I want to be doing, or this is a client, not a client that I necessarily want to work with. But how many times did I say yes and then regretted it? Learning to say no with the confidence that someone else will fill that seat, today, tomorrow, next week, but that seat will be filled. Once I figured that out, man, that made a huge difference. All right, so just as a recap, what are the 5 fundamentals to performing at your best, to being the very best that you can be? Getting enough sleep consistently, regular exercise, determine when you are the most alert, and then work in that space. Learn to chase the flow by turning off your distractions and like email. Don't be going, if you're in the flow, don't take a side, journey to check your email, because man, that's going to suck you down some rabbit hole and is going to completely screw up your flow. Turn off distractions and give yourself the flexibility to follow when you are in the groove. You sometimes you get into the flow, and it's not like flipping a switch. There's a whole process to that. And then finally, learn the art of saying no. If you can learn the art of saying no, and if you're willing to actually do it, and that's the key, you may intellectually say, I get it, but you got to be willing to do it. Once you're willing to do it, man, you will free up a lot of time and energy to do these things. All right, everybody. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you would like more information on this, or you would specifically like help on building a law firm, making a law firm profitable, and being the very best they can, I am available. You can reach me through mikechastain.com or michaelchastain.com, either one, and then send me a message. And I would be more than happy to sit down with you. I do a free consultation initially to analyze whether or not I'm someone that can help you, and what can we do for you. All right, there's the crows going off. And there's the big howl. All right, we're at 20 minutes. So I hope that this is, really useful to you. There's a great deal of information that I believe I can help people with. And, reach out and contact me. If you have any questions or there's anything else I can do, this will be on Facebook. You can put something on the comments below, and I'll definitely respond to that. So everybody, I hope you have a great week. And just remember, be grateful for what you have and be willing to work for what you want. All right, y'all, take care.